Hello everyone, my name is Jessica Wyman. I am a registered nurse getting my bachelor's at the Bloomsburg University. For my project, I'm going to be talking about global warming. My objectives for this PowerPoint are to define global warming and the effects it takes on the world, recognize natural resources which are causing harm, outline events and meetings which have happened over time to stop global warming, and identify how to stop global warming. Okay, so what is global warming? Plain simple answer, the world or the Earth is warming up. Scientists generally agree that the average global temperature has climbed almost 1.4 Fahrenheit over the past 100 years. The pace of change has been an additional 0.3 degrees Fahrenheit a decade. So basically, global warming is causing the planet to be much warmer than it is, and people are noticing global warming now because of the changes it's made to the Earth. So what's causing this? The number one reason people say is causing global warming is the greenhouse effect, which is caused by fossil fuels. So the greenhouse effect is when carbon dioxide, air pollutants, and greenhouse gases collect in the atmosphere. Now, unlike other air pollutants or some other things, they can just go through the atmosphere and into space. But these certain ones can't. So what they do is they hang and absorb the sunlight, and they bounce back the radiation back onto the Earth's surface. These pollutants that are causing global warming stay in the atmosphere for a couple years. That way they're trapping that heat and sending it back to Earth. So this is a picture of the greenhouse effect. As it says, some sunlight that hits the Earth is reflected, some becomes heat. CO2 and other gases in the atmosphere trap heat, heating the Earth. I almost think of these gases and pollutants as like a mirror that are stuck on the atmosphere, and it just like warms up and shines it right back. It can't escape for a while. So some of these fossil fuels that some of my online research talked about there's three big ones. Coal. And coal can cause black carbon, which we'll go into in a little bit. Oil, which can release CO2 when burned, and the number one pollution in the ocean. In my Revels textbook, they talk a lot about pollution, which is a whole different issue. I'm just going to touch on fossil fuels and global warming, but that is the number one pollutant in the ocean, and that was something I was so shocked to hear about. And then the last one is natural gases. An example of this would be CFCs, which I'll go in to talk about what they are as well. So when these are burned or into the atmosphere, the CO2 is created. So really the bad thing is the CO2, but there's also other pollutants, or these pollutants have some form of CO2 in them. So CFCs. I know when I've heard about global warming, I always was told the aerosol can, like Lysol and everything. They do make up the majority of the chlorofluorocarbons, but there's other things I had no idea about. Foams, solvents, refrigerators, and they did talk about refrigerators and air conditioners. These have the components that are toxic for the atmosphere. These kind of eat away at the ozone layer, so we really need to reduce these, because if you take away the ozone layer, you're just going to cause global warming. So this is a picture of the ozone, and it's almost like its density. The more green it is, obviously, the denser it is. And this part over the Arctic is not as dense. And this is one of the pictures to prove that CFCs are not good for the environment or the ozone layer. The next thing is black carbon, also known as soot. That's the release of the carbon dioxide into the atmosphere when coal or diesel is burned. So they have shown that, as this carbon dioxide and soot are released into the atmosphere, they don't go right into space like they should. So they go and float away to other places. They can absorb into the clouds, and when it rains, it creates like this picture, carbon on ice, which will make the ice melt faster. And this is a picture, as you can see, the dark spots of carbon or soot just in the air. So what will happen if the ozone layer depletes? As it gets thinner, problems such as skin cancer, genetic changes to plants and animals, eye disorders, and a suppression of your immune system can happen. Just a timeline about global warming. In 1962, Rachel Carlson wrote the Silent Spring book. The Silent Spring book really brought recognition of what pesticides, deforestation, reckless disregard of the environment can do to the world. Deforestation is a big one too that I didn't include in this slide, but when you deforest things such as the Amazon's a big topic and things like that, when you cut those trees down, you're releasing a great abundance of CO2. Not good at all. 1967, a huge oil tanker named Torrey Canyon was wrecked on the coast of England and spilled tons of barrels of crude oil, as you can see. So that brought a lot of attention to the world and what they need to do. Therefore, the next year, the Biosphere Conference was held, which focused on what humans were doing that were hurting the planet Earth, such as air and water pollution, overgrazing, and deforestation. And then in 1972, the United Nations Conference of Human Environment discussed environmental problems. They also created the United Nations Environmental Program was created. They also had meetings in 92 and 2002. So what can we do? What can this do to the Earth? Serious weather. In one of the articles, it says that the snow will be more severe. The higher categories of hurricanes, due to the warming of the air and the ocean, will cause hurricanes that are usually a category 2 to become a category 3 or 4. You'll have longer droughts and warmer winters. Environmental changes, the melting of the glaciers, the Arctic ice. When it freezes in the winter, it'll take longer to freeze and it'll melt earlier. The ocean can become acidic and the global sea level will rise. So what can we do? We created the Paris Agreement, and there's also many NGO raising awareness groups. The Clean Energy Plan, the recycle will help. Solar and wind energy and electric cars. And here are just a list of some groups of NGOs that support, some NGOs, some not, that support global warming. So the Paris Agreement was established in 2016. It's a non-binding international treaty with the aim to keep warming of the Earth below 2 degrees Celsius over a span of 20 years. Unfortunately, this was done during Obama's presidency in 2005, but unfortunately President Obama pulled out in 2017. But the New York City mayor reached out to 100 of the most population cities, and they still abide by the Paris Agreement. They're looking for ways for these cities to build more efficient housing and buildings that are energy efficient and don't use coal to burn or gases like such that are bad for the environment. So here are just some pictures to finish off of global warming, what it's done over the years. You can see how the Colorado River in Arizona, just over a year's span, was nice and wide, and now it was a drought. And that was known as one of the worst southwestern droughts in the United States. This is the Montana Glacier Park. There's a glacier on the left and there's not one in the right. And this is the glacier park as well. There's a glacier and now it all melted to a lake. And these are my references. I used the Global Issues, Political, Economic, and Cultural textbook, the NRDC, and livescience.com. Thank you for listening.